I think I spent like 3 weeks trying to write up our own bylaws because, again, that's not where my background lies. And our articles of incorporation and our tax status, all this stuff. And then I paid someone $500 and they did it in one day. And I was like, okay, like I think 3 weeks of my time are worth $500. So it's knowing when to go to the experts and to learn from them and just, hey, I don't need to be a tax expert at the end of the day. I need to be an expert in the community grocer and what my mission is.
Welcome to GLBL Radio.
Where I kind of came back and was like, our food system is broken. People are malnourished and hungry. Someone should do something about this. That's what I said. And I was complaining to my mom on the phone after like 6 months of doing this community work of just how there isn't accessible nutrition access in our low-income communities, especially our low-income communities of color. And I was just on the phone complaining. And my mom's like, hey, dummy, you have all the privilege as a Penn student and all the resources at your disposal to do something about it. So why don't you do it? And that was sort of just a light bulb moment where I was like, yeah, like this isn't my community that I entered, but became family. And I was there really every single day, just becoming family with Mr. Reeves and all of our neighbors in South and Southwest Philly. And just understanding that, yeah, I do have this privilege and the university's endless resources that I can do something about this. And that was where my world into social entrepreneurship made sense and kind of started. It was just the understanding that, one, I hate working for other people. Two, I want to bring good in the world. And I had an opportunity to do something that made sense to me. And that was kind of the kickoff moment where even at that point, I didn't have the idea for the community grocer. It wasn't a thing at that moment. But I knew right then and there that I needed to commit my life and my work to doing good for others. And I didn't know whether it was going to be nonprofit or for-profit, or even if it was a business. I didn't know what it was going to be. But that's what kind of dove me into that space. And, here we are 4 years later and, founder, president, and just really stewarding the vision that started on the block 4 years ago, pretty much to the day.
No, that's awesome. It's crazy to see how even just taking that initiative and doing something incredibly small, you can get such a large scale result that comes out of it. How have your past experiences that you've worked through helped in terms of some lessons that you've been able to apply to where you are now?
Oh man, there's so many. I mean, I'll start off right. Like my freshman year internship was on Capitol Hill doing fundraising for House candidates, and just being able to ask for money. Like that is such an important skill in the entrepreneurship world or startup, and really just in the business world. And it was, asking donors for money 8 hours a day with candidates and learning what it means to be a fundraiser that I got when I was like 18 years old. That became so critical. I would say, 30% of my work or more is just fundraising. So that was something early on I learned. But more importantly, I think the lesson that has gotten me this far is being able to listen and authentically listen. And that was something, whether it was in high school, I was part of an organization called Estudiante to Estudiante, which was helping undocumented immigrants like enter the high school community. And it wasn't a group where I came with solutions, but just listening to what these students needed. And it was coming into Philly and coming into Penn. It was actually leaving Penn and entering Philadelphia for the first time and doing that community work during my junior year, starting with voter registration, where it was the understanding that everyone was an expert in the systems of their lives and not coming in with any hypothesis or ideas, just being there to listen and just being a persistent presence. And that skill has gotten us so far, because without it, first of all, TCG is only in existence because of our neighbors. Like this model is fully built out from the ground up. But authentic listening has been one of the most important things. I think so many entrepreneurs think they have the idea and then bring a solution top down. And that never really works, whether it's in the for-profit sector, if you're like, I have this idea, but no customers want it, or in the nonprofit sector, where you're like, I'm going to help people out, but you've actually never spoken to them. I think it's really been authentic listening that's gotten us so far. Yeah, and fundraising. That's a big one. Just not being afraid to ask for money. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, that's something I think that as every founder goes through the process, it's something that is a skill that definitely needs to be developed. I'm still working on that one. I think that especially through the Penn journey. It's been something that has been talked about a lot, the pitching process and thinking about how to get your message out in a way that's helpful. How do you think that your time at Penn has kind of transformed that in terms of being able to grow the organization and and shape you as a person?
Yeah, for me, we won the 2022 Penn President Sustainability Prize, which is an award given out every year to 3 to 6 senior groups, give or take, of innovative ideas that are going to make the world a better place. And they have a for-profit and nonprofit category. And it's $100,000 plus a $50,000 living stipend for the winners. And we won that in 2022. And more so than the 100K, because you'll learn in the fundraising or the nonprofit or any space that $100,000 doesn't get you very far. That's one single oven for the community grocer. So it's not getting us that far. But it was more so the clout and the network of the university that allowed us to go to boardrooms across the city and at this point now across the country and across the world to say, hey, this is a legitimate idea, that this has some backing, and here's a network of people I can reach out to help bring this vision to reality. I think Penn is great. I had a great time. It was a really fun 4 years, minus the pandemic that came right through the middle of our college experience. But it was more importantly the network where you really see this, whether it's alumni or your classmates, and the ability just to have that connection to keep growing. And for us, it's been one conversation at a time, and it's just been able to leapfrog a few boardrooms or leapfrog a few meetings because of just the Penn name that's gotten us so far. And I think that's been like the number one support of Penn beyond that 100K that we started off with.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I think one of the things that every entrepreneur probably learns is people are power. You got to surround yourself with great people, and once you do that, you can make anything happen. So that's awesome. Diving into more a bit what TCG does. So what is it that you guys do exactly on a day-to-day basis? How do you help the community, and where do you see the organization growing in terms of your long-term vision?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Community Grocer is a grassroots-led nonprofit organization that is reinventing the corner store and reimagining nutritional assistance. And what that truly means is that federal policy says you cannot use your SNAP benefits or food stamps for anything hot or prepared with the intention of on-premise consumption. And that is, very much the federal policy that governs this country. And what that effectively means is that chips, soda, and Hot Pockets are eligible under this program, but a rotisserie chicken isn't. And that has led to hypertension, diabetes, and really just malnutrition in some of our low-income communities across the country, whether that's rural or urban. And in Philadelphia alone, there's 2,000 independently owned corner stores that are selling unhealthy foods, pretty much just ultra-processed junk, at a 10-to-1 ratio. And in a city that's affected by food apartheid, where neighbors don't have consistent nutrition access, that leads to really devastating consequences. So what the Community Grocer is, and what this model that we've created is, it's the first retailer in the country that sells an all-day menu of EBT eligible or SNAP eligible meal kits. Think HelloFresh, where everything is pre-sorted, pre-chopped, pre-marinated, everything you need for a full, delicious, nutritious meal. But if you can't have it hot or prepared on premises, and knowing that whether you're unhoused and you don't have a kitchen, or if you're a 10-year-old, what are you going to do with raw ingredients, or a senior with arthritis who just can't work a kitchen anymore, that we need to ensure the pathways towards preparation. So through a pretty radical partnership with some workforce development agencies and a culinary training kitchen, that right next door on the other side of our building is a culinary workforce kitchen, where after you purchase your meal kit, you can leave our store and right next door trade in that meal kit for that one that's hot and ready. So effectively the first building through a collaboration and radical partnership that allows SNAP recipients to walk away with a hot, delicious, fresh meal. And that is the vision that we've been working on. So we still aren't open. We're under construction with our first site at 627 South 60th. So in West Philadelphia, that has been really 4 years in the making, and we're getting really close to our opening and improving this pilot. But the whole country is asking for it. 40 out of the 50 states, we've met with Congress members on both sides of the aisle, and everyone is ready to see this model be brought to life, because it is the market-based solution for problems that our government doesn't really want to deal with. And it's unlocking benefits that are already being used, but really misutilized in our communities. where we believe we can support farmers and growers and our healthcare providers, because food is medicine. So in that though, right, I'm first and foremost focused on opening this first location in the next 4 to 6 months and proving that this is a sustainable model that will work for communities across the country. Um, but more importantly, in the long term, I think I see this as something that can be in every community that needs and wants one, and have the toolkits for every community to build it themselves. That the community grocer is a collective. It is a vision of our neighbors, but knowing that every 10 square blocks has a different relationship with food, it has to be built from within. But then on the larger scale, we've already kind of been shaping policy. We've been to Congress, we've been to the Hill. We're working with the USDA. We're working with the Commonwealth as well on how to shape and reshape our food system from soil to supper. So in the next 5 years, like my dream vision is that we have the community grocer in Philadelphia and also in every community that needs one, and we're growing, expanding, and bringing this retail operation across the country. But on another scale, also helping shape policy on the federal level, so that we're really reimagining our broken food system. And it is a broken food system. And all the while, showing net sustainability and making sure our stakeholders, which is our neighbors, are the leading voices in that story the whole time. So that's the long-term vision. But right now I'm like hyper focused on opening this first store.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. You gotta hit the milestones and then use those as ways to continue to grow. When you think about the partnerships that you've had to develop throughout the process, how do you think about that process in general? What do you look for when you're trying to identify good partners, and how do you go about that in terms of saying, okay, hey, this is somebody that we want to partner with and we want to bring the vision to?
Yeah, for us, it's been really just a journey of faith and luck, every step of the way. Whether it was, M&T Bank, I cold LinkedIn message Dominique Goss, the head of their charitable foundation, on her first week on the job. And she's a Black woman from Philadelphia who really, understands what it means to live in a city affected by food apartheid. And 2 meetings later and a few conversations and meetings, and she donated $300,000 to the community grocer, which allowed us to buy our first property in West Philadelphia. And it was just, again, her responding one LinkedIn message, and now we have an incredible partnership with M&T Bank. Or whether it was with the FMC Corporation, where I showed up to a meeting 2 weeks early because I misread my calendar. And I met with the head of their sustainability department. She took the meeting even though it was 2 weeks early. And now we're 2 years into a partnership that was named one of the top partnerships in philanthropy, where they're helping us work with farmers and on the ag side of policy. And working together from soil to supper to reimagine our food systems. Or even, more recently, we partnered with Penn Medicine, which has been probably one of the coolest partnerships we've ever had, where one of our interns, who reached out to us cold email, was like, hey, I'm working at a wet lab in the microbiology lab within the nutrition sciences department within Penn Medicine. And I'd love to see how what I'm studying at the micro level actually be worked out at societal level. And he started interning for us, connected us to the head of the NSAM, Dr. Gary Wu. And a month later, we have a co-created collaborative study with Penn Medicine. We're able to track the dietary and health outcomes of our neighbors in West Philadelphia, where our neighbors were actually trained to be lead investigators, and we're sharing all that information with them, to be able to prove how our intervention is not only increasing nutrition access, but also improving health outcomes and reducing healthcare costs. And that's just one of faith. Like, that literally happened because one of our interns just decided to reach out one day. And to date, we has been probably the coolest and biggest partnership we've ever had. So the strategy for it, it's hasn't been super strategic, I'll say, but just one of faith and continuing to share the dream and bringing in the thought partners and leaders from across the country, from across the city, from across the block, to bring it to life together. But really continuing to share that this is, again, not the vision of Eli or Alex, but really our neighbors, that we're just stewarding it. And when we tell people, the right people seem to keep popping up every step of the way.
Yeah, no, that's something beautiful, especially with philanthropy in general. As you talk to more people about what you're doing, and I've noticed this with Global Foundation, it seems to almost attract the right energy, and allows you to get into places or rooms and get conversations to be able to push what you're trying to do forward, which is always great. So that's kind of on a macro level. On a micro level, what does your day-to-day look like?
Oh, my day-to-day is changing every day. Alex and I like to say every single day is a hurdle, and we're running a marathon with a million hurdles on it. And it's just taking on whatever task that looks like. So right now, I'm very much consumed by construction. So I'm going to the construction site almost every day to make sure that, building is going the way it's supposed to be, our permits are all in check, and that, the crew is hitting the timelines we're expecting of them. It's constantly fundraising that we need to have the capital necessary to test, pilot, and create the expectations that we need to for our neighbors, because this is 4 years in the making with the whole country looking. So when we open this first location, it's got to be good. It's got to be great. So managing those expectations and having the capital really to have a few months of runway testing, knowing that we don't need to try to sell out on day one because our operations will be a mess. It's a lot of emails, it's a lot of calls, it's sharing the vision with neighbors, and it's sharing the vision with stakeholders. And right now it's full gun in the next 4 months to operationalize it. So it's figuring out staffing plans and giving that power back to our neighbors. So we formed a resident action committee with different subcommittees where actually neighborhood leaders and neighborhood organizations will really oversee the decision-making process of the store. Once again, taking it out of our hands so that whether it's hiring, the general manager or, the youth that are going to be placed in it through workforce development, that power is going back to the community. But to even get to that phase, we need to have a lot of structure. We need to have a lot of procedures, and get our operational flow down. So my day-to-day really, in terms of, I wake up whenever I want to, depends on, the day. But I try to get up by like 7:30, 8, drink a little coffee, like have some water, coffee, hit the gym, come back, shower, respond to emails for about an hour or so. Then it's usually an hour and a half or so of grant writing. Then I'll eat lunch. Then I'll hop on with our internship teams. So we have some fundraising teams, we have advocacy teams, we have marketing, we have design, as we're building our brand out. Then after that, I'll usually have a few calls, maybe do a podcast with Nelson or something. And then from about 4 to 6, I will continue to kind of just work on whatever projects I have that day of, emails, then kind of break for dinner, maybe go play soccer at night, depending on the day, and then probably send 2-3 more emails and shut everything off before 9 or 10, watch some TV, and repeat that cycle every day. But also knowing that it is a marathon, and that's something that is taking me a while to just know when to take a break and turn things off a little early and not be too hard on myself if I sleep in a little extra. But that's generally a day-to-day, but it truly changes. Like I'm going to San Diego this Thursday for a conference, so that will change my week for sure.
Yeah, no, that's gonna be nice. You'll be able to get some nice weather, maybe spend some time on the beach.
Exactly.
No, that's awesome. I think that's one of the things that on the entrepreneurship side, definitely marathon, not a sprint. You gotta be able to sustain your operations, especially since everything's gonna be going for years, not just weeks. So that's great. I know you touched on building out the partnerships and giving the responsibility back to the community. How do you think about the build out of your team? And I know you've created a world-class team around you. So how did you think about that process and also think about the team building as you go forward throughout any new roles that you need to fill?
Yeah, so the full-time team has been Alex and myself for the last 4 years, and didn't take a salary for the first few years of that, but now thank God we're paying ourselves so I can actually sleep and eat. But again, really one of faith. So one, for example, one of the first contractors we had to bring on was a culinary director. Alex and I, again, no experience in grocery, no experience in kitchens, no experience in food. And we needed a culinary director, and we were both on the same page with that. But we're like, how do we even go about this? And it was watching Fox 29 and seeing this Black woman chef named Chef Z with the most incredible energy. And we follow her on Instagram, and we're like, she's awesome. And one night, like 10 p.m., because again, this is the life of an entrepreneur, your mind's thinking about your business. I'm laying in bed. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to reach out to her right now. So I start DMing her on Instagram, and I'm halfway through the message, and Alex calls me. And I pick up, and I'm like, I feel like you're calling me for a reason, but I want to hear what you're saying. He's like, I think we should reach out to Chef Z to be our culinary director. And I was like, you're never going to believe it. I'm halfway through a DM to her right now. And this is not a lie, like true story here. So DM her, and the next morning she responds, you'll never believe this. I was just driving by the corner store in my neighborhood because she's from Philadelphia, and was like, this is not it. And I wish there's something out there to do something. I want to dedicate my life to it. She's like, I was just thinking that the other week. I'm on board. And then it was just her that started things off. And then a few months later, she's like, hey, you should meet Chef Joy, my friend, who's also a Black woman chef from West Philadelphia, 2 blocks away from us. And we were like, okay, like we'll meet her. And at the same time that we need to start thinking through our staffing plan, and this building is actually going to be a workforce placement center, so that organizations that have funding, whether through anti-violence grants or other state and federal funds, to put youth in internships for like 6-month periods, that we are actually going to be the ideal placement for those youth. That instead of us having 45 staff on our payroll, we'll have 45 young people through these grants working in TCG at 6-month rotations. And that's, again, I don't have a background in workforce. I don't know how to build a curriculum. I don't know how to build a staffing plan. And we meet Chef Joy at the same time this is kind of occurring. And she happens to be leaving the community college of Philadelphia. She was a culinary instructor there. And she says, yeah, I would love to work for you guys. And she's now, our workforce director, and was actually just nominated as a James Beard nominee for Chef Policy Advocate, which is pretty cool because underneath the community grocer. So we just got our first ever James Beard honoree. And just building that in faith, and that it's going through your network. That if you come with the top-down approach, again, you're not going to find the right people, but finding people who care, who are passionate, that they'll arrive. And I think the best way that we've been successful at it is just letting the people who know a lot more than we do, whether it's on the tech side of things or on the food side of things, to give them their recommendations and just share what we know and tell them what we want to get to, but not the how. And they've been major in that and continuing to refine it. So now we have Chef Z and Chef Joy, as contractors, and Joy will be joining us full time shortly. And we're building out the team really quickly. Like, we in the next 2 months need to hire a general manager. As of today, I have no clue who that's going to be, but going through that same process, I'm confident we'll find the right person. And who knows, maybe he'll win some awards or she'll win some awards. So that's kind of the process we've gone through, and just identifying needs. I went to this conference actually just of nonprofit leaders in Philadelphia. And I asked that same question. I was like, how do you build out a team? Because for years, it's just been me and Alex, and it took us a while to figure out how to work well together. But now we're at a point in our development where it is just too much work for 2 people, whether it's construction or fundraising or staffing or sharing the vision. We were just overwhelmed. Like, we had 100 emails in our inbox that needed replies, and we couldn't get to it. And I asked that same question at this conference, and shout out to Kendra from Philly. She said, you should create a job jar, which is just an Excel sheet of all the things that you do, like that Eli and Alex do on a daily basis, on a monthly basis. And then you write out on the next column things that only Eli and Alex can do, that this is something you can't delegate. And then you write out all the things that can be delegated and all the things that should be delegated. And from there, you start seeing a clear picture of what tasks you shouldn't be doing. Whether it was me, writing every single grant, like that is not a good use of our time. There's grant writers that can do that. And realizing, okay, I need to find someone to do this. Or whether it was, workforce development, that is not my skill set, that we need to bring in someone for that. So that was a really great thought exercise that allowed us to delegate for the first time and be able to build out the team that we need by just putting in priorities of what we're doing and what can be delegated. And I think that's for any entrepreneur who's beginning to get overwhelmed because you have too much work on your plate, write down a list of everything you're doing and see what you don't need to be doing.
Yeah, no, that's definitely great advice. Something that I'm constantly working on, trying to figure out how to best delegate, how to best think about team growth in general. On that note, what do you think about in terms of ways to skill up yourself? And how do you find resources that you think are powerful in your self-improvement journey?
I mean, every day, right? 4 years ago, I couldn't have told you a thing about the food space. Now we're talking, I'm deeply involved into Medicaid and healthcare and the way that food is medicine. And I'm literally advocating on the Hill. And these are things again, if you asked me about 1115B waivers 4 years ago or SNAP, I couldn't have told you the first thing about it. But it's continuing to listen. Again, coming back to authentic listening, that whether it's sitting in a conference or having a conversation with a neighbor, just understanding that everyone is an expert in their daily lives, right? Their experiences are something you can learn from, and giving people that respect and being an authentic listener. And that's the key, right, for my self-development. There's also, a lot of things I know I'm not good at, and it's outsourcing it. And those were things that I didn't do early days. Like, for example, we had to get, our 501c3 status and our incorporation and our bylaws. I think I spent like 3 weeks trying to write up our own bylaws because, again, that's not where my background lies. And our articles of incorporation and our tax status, all this stuff. And then I paid someone $500 and they did it in one day. And I was like, okay, like, I think 3 weeks of my time are worth $500. So it's knowing when to go to the experts and to learn from them, and just, hey, I don't need to be a tax expert at the end of the day. I need to be an expert in the community grocer and what my mission is. But beyond that, just in terms of like actual professional development, I've done, a few executive classes here and there. But just, again, taking the advice and learning from others on every step of the way, that you don't need to reinvent the wheel, that there's people who are already doing the work you're doing, or that you want to get into, and just building off of that. I'm not great with Canva or slide decks, but asking the right people to do that for me. So I think it's just listening and absorbing through others. That's the best thing you can always do. And I think where, for me, for example, like, I work from home most days because we don't have an office space right now. And for any founder, right, it's really easy for you to just get into your own shell and just continue to work on your computer or send out emails alone. But it's when you leave, right? Like, you go to a conference, you go to a happy hour and just have a conversation with someone where you're actually going to learn way more in 10 minutes than you probably will learn spending all day Googling something. But just being ready and willing to accept that advice, I think, is always a really important step.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, that definitely goes back to the portion where people is power, right?
Yep.
There's so much wealth of knowledge in all the experiences that people have had, and as long as we're humble when we go into interactions and speak with them and are able to ask and probe and learn from them, then it's something that can always be super beneficial. I know you mentioned the 3 weeks taking the time to get the initial documents set up. What have been some other challenges that you faced as you've been trying to work through this whole process?
Oh my God. I mean, again, every day is a hurdle. God. So, I mean, the first one was actually finding a location for the community grocer. That, our work actually began in South Philly, and we're now opening in West Philadelphia. Two very different neighborhoods, different organizations, different people, different stories. And our work began in the background of refinery work and co-created studies, and really walking in digital tours and letting, again, neighbors be the experts in their lives and sharing their stories with no hypothesis. And we built years of trust in South Philadelphia. And after the refinery shut down, which was a good thing, oldest crude oil refinery in the United States, and it was causing cancer and asthma along the projects that were built alongside this refinery, that we couldn't actually find a property that worked for us in South Philadelphia because of once the refinery shut down, all the New York developers came in and bought up every piece of land. And it was Mr. Reeves, our mentor, who's from South Philadelphia, who's been doing this work with us, that he was like, this is too good of an idea to not bring to life. So you got to go shop it across the city. So that meant, what was 2 years of community work and trust that was built from within, that this was not two white guys. We had to then immediately prove that this is a model that's scalable and can work in other communities. And that journey was a tough one, whether it was on version 5 of a lease in Southwest Philadelphia, the day before Christmas Eve. Pipe burst from the top floor after like 6 months of negotiation and flooded the whole building. and having to go back to square one after 6 months and just being like, all right, that was bad. But we got to bring this to life and just keep pushing. And thank God that happened. That all happened for a reason, because it led us to 60th Street, where not only did we find the building that was meant for us, but also the community that was ready to build it together. And coming back to hurdles, right? That was one of the biggest challenges, was garnering trust. That we showed up in Cobbs Creek, West Philadelphia, two white kids from Penn. And Penn has a very violent history in West Philadelphia, from the Move bombing, which is like 3 blocks away from our store, to just, even medical tests, a lot of really horrible things that we had to just prove that we were there for the right reasons, but also just listen. And that was 6 months of volunteer work, of just conversations, neighbor to neighbor, before we felt confident in our ability to buy this building and build it together. And that was, I got yelled at on the street a few times. I, screamed at here and there, but now everyone feels that this is their store, and it is, that is my community now. I'm there almost every day, but at least every Friday, where we run a pantry and we do hard hat tours, and it's just family on the block. And that, that was one of the biggest hurdles. But beyond that, proving as a nonprofit startup that this is sustainable and that we could get a loan was one of the hardest challenges. So Alex and I don't come from a finance background, but again, we've taken this journey in faith. Like when people ask, like, how are you going to make it, profitable? How are you going to make sure this works? And we're just like, early days, we're like, we don't know, but we're going to get there because we have to, and we have no other choice. And the first question we ever got was, how are we going to do a grocery store margin, right? That we're selling meal kits, we're just selling raw ingredients, but have a full kitchen staff, even though it's a separate organization next door. How are you going to sustain that? Because those margins just don't work. And it was walking into Congressman Evans' office after our viral Inquirer article in 2023, and some guy is walking out, and that happens to be one of the largest workforce development directors in the country. And Congressman Evans goes, hey, dummies, the answer to your labor problems and your staffing margins is workforce development, that you can create education pathways for youth that is funded through state and federal programs and other organizations that really pays for your labor costs, while you being a blessing for your community, and they also get to be a blessing while working in the store. And we're like, okay, like, bam, we figured that out. That is, our labor costs are almost nothing. And so we go to the banks and the CDFIs in town, and they're just like, no, we still don't believe in the purchasing power of your neighbors. And we don't actually believe in the power of the SNAP dollar. And we've actually never seen low-income access to nutrition be successful. And this is some of the institutions that have federal financing for fresh food in low-income neighborhoods. And we're just like, okay, back to listening. That if you don't believe that, even with almost no labor costs, we still have labor costs, but almost none because of workforce development, how are we going to prove to you that our neighbors want this? And they were like, go pay McKinsey $250,000 for a market-based study. And I'm like, I am not paying my Penn classmates who are in New York, who are my age, to come to West Philadelphia. Like, no way, no how, for the work that we've been doing for 4 years on the ground. And it was, for us, it was going back to Mr. Gary, who's on our block, who's a double amputee due to diabetes, and that he has a home care provider through Medicaid, and through his Medicaid provider and through his home care company, he's been getting delivered to him every 2 weeks frozen meals that are medically tailored, because there's no salt, no sugar, coming from a factory out of state that is shipped to him. And it is reimbursed at $15 a meal through the home care company, where the home care company, purchases it with their credit card and gets reimbursed at $15 a meal, no matter the cost of it. And that the home care business is one of the most competitive things in Philadelphia, through Medicare and Medicaid. And through the last 1115B Medicaid waiver, they were able to reimburse 2 meals a day for any senior on disability with a home care provider. And we were like, Mr. Gary, watching him get this delivery and feed it to the birds, because it's gray, it's disgusting, it's freezer burned. It doesn't actually look appetizing. And even after it takes up your whole freezer, it's just nasty. And it's not supporting the economy. Like, for so many reasons, it sucks. I'm like, Mr. Gary, what is going on here? And he's just like, yeah, this is this whole situation. This is how I'm getting these meals. It's gross. I don't eat it. The cats aren't even eating it. The birds aren't even eating it. That's how you know this food is bad. And we were just like, well, what if we could slowly dive into that space? So through the whole national, press we were getting, we got connected to a home care company, some young guns that were just starting off, and we were like, it's a really competitive business. Like, what if you could promise your clients in West Philly that you could get them fresh, delicious food that actually supports your community? So just signing the letter of commitment with them for 30 seniors, so 60 meals a day of guaranteed revenue of just TCG's meal kits, but delivered to our neighbors, and that's really within 3 square blocks. That guaranteed revenue was enough for loan committees to be like, oh, this is a sustainable model, that this is revenue generating and within our risk appetite. So that was just like the biggest challenge to get through loan committee. But taking that in faith and really, they beat us up with those numbers. It took us months and months to get it, but through it, we were able to sign a $900,000 construction loan with a Community First Fund, which was the impetus for us to be able to start construction and build this and bring this vision to life. So that was probably the biggest hurdle we've had to date, is just proving that this is something that can be sustainable and within the risk appetite of, lenders of a bank. But we overcame that, and here we are. And it's just at this point, it's the hurdle of managing expectations and proving this model and making it sustainable in a way that meets what the world is looking for and our neighbors are looking for.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Coming from a credit background myself, I can definitely understand the bank's concerns when they ask you those questions. But it's a process, especially since they have to get comfortable with something that they've never really seen before. So I can empathize with them, and I can definitely empathize with you when you're trying to convince somebody, hey, we're trying to build something new. Give us a little credit.
Yep.
But it's definitely hard for the institutions. That's for sure. As we think about some of the things that you've been able to take away from the challenges that you've had, what lessons would you give to your past self when you think about some of the things that, if somebody else wanted to go and try to be in your shoes or start another organization, what would you say you'd do differently?
I would say early on, bring in that help and don't do it all yourself. I think, like I said, even with the incorporation, the tax documents, 501c3, I spent like a month and a half on that. And that was time wasted, really, at the end of the day, when I could have just spent a little bit of money or reach out for the pro bono support to get those things done. I think that's a really early thing when you're starting up a business or whatever it may be. Like, be willing to just spend a little money or ask for a little help early on, because it's going to go such a long way. Know when you don't have to do it yourself. The other thing would be, take a breath. Nothing is going to happen as fast as you think it is. I was looking at our first timelines and our first numbers. I thought it was going to cost $300,000 to build the first TCG. The answer is it's $1.8 million. I thought we'd be open 2 years ago. We're going to be open next year. Then nothing happens the way the timing you want it to be, but everything happens the way it's supposed to be. And my dad likes to call it strategic impatience, that you have to know when to be patient and you have to know when to be impatient, but to have a little bit more patience and slack on yourself. I think I was working myself to the bone in those first few years, almost to the point of like, because I was like, I have to bring it to life now. Our neighbor, this again, for us, it's a nutrition emergency. Our neighbors are dying when we're not open because it's chips and soda every day instead of a healthy meal. But it was even within that, just being like, it is all going to happen when it needs to. And so for any entrepreneur or someone starting it off, know that it's not going to happen as quick as you want. I think the typical founder story takes about 5 years before you reach where you want to be. And I'm definitely living proof of that. We're in year 4 right now, and year 5 is when we're officially going to be opening. So it's really, the 5-year journey is real. But I see, where the future holds and where it's going to be, and it's all happened in faith and for the right reasons. So to take a breath, be strategically impatient and strategically patient, and to ask for help early on instead of wasting your own time and others' time by trying to force yourself to do things you don't know how to do.
Yeah, no, those are all great pieces of advice. As we wrap up, how can people help and get involved with TCG? And any last messages you want to tell to the audience?
Absolutely. So the community grocer takes all of us. We are reimagining nutritional assistance to ensure that everyone is living stronger, healthier lives. And as our name implies, it takes community, it takes all of us. So I'm going to plug you to a few places. Go to our website, thecommunitygrocer.org. I'm sure Nelson will put in the show notes. Please donate. We actually really do need capital for everything from equipment to first hires to have the runway to prove this model. That once we're open, we're self-sustaining, but please donate. It's a nonprofit. You can get tax deductions. It's a great way to do. And B, follow us on social media. Our Instagram is at the.community.grocer. All socials, you'll find it on our website. And also, volunteer and get involved. We host hard hat tours every Friday. Again, all that information is our website. We have volunteer opportunities. And if you hear this podcast, and whether it's you're a funder, whether it's someone who wants to just volunteer their time and expertise, help me with some spreadsheets, or it's connect me with someone who could be really helpful, that it takes all of us. So please reach out. Our email is info@thecommunitygrocer.org. And please share this story with your community. It takes all of us. So please share a link, share a donate page, and join this journey, because it's just beginning, but we need your support to bring it to the finish line and to that starting point.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think that this is going to be something that is going to grow and will definitely help Philly, and in turn help the country. So on that note, I want to say thank you, Eli. I really appreciate your time today. Thanks for coming on the show. We're looking forward to seeing where TCG goes as the movement, and we're in full support.
Thanks, guys. Talk soon.
If you'd like to support our work, please like and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for listening to Global Radio, and stay tuned for the next episode.